We're streaming.
Streaming and screaming.
Yeah. Okay, and welcome to Baarns Heller, and we've got a bizarre thing here. Let me figure out how to do this right. You don't need to sit back. You can sit forward. Sit forward. Yeah. So Mr. Heller, for those of you who don't know, he is out recording an audiobook at a major publisher. I think it's Macmillan, but don't quote me on that. I can't remember where it is. So he called me and said, "Hey, you do it yourself." And I go, "No." So I recruited Lisa to come in and talk about stuff. She didn't get enough airtime. I talk about her a little bit here and there, but people always ask me, "All right, what's she doing? How's she doing? What?" And she's attended the narrators retreat, and so I'll talk about her backstory here in a second. So welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you.
I could have put her in her booth. I don't have a camera in there. She normally does Zoom from her study, and I decided, you know what, it'd be better to just put us in the same room here, and so we're doing it live. We're doing it there. So you can, of course, you can ask questions. You can go ahead and just make sure if you have something that you want to talk about, be sure to ask us, and we'll see those in the questions. Now, it's always helpful if you tell us that you can hear us, that you can see us, that things are working well there. And that's one of those things that I'm always, okay. He says, well, I say great things about her when
I'm not in the room.
Yeah. Thanks, John. And it's really helpful. Thank you for covering for me. So let me give you a little bit of backstory, and then she can fill in some details. So we've been married about 42 years. I always get the years wrong. It's 40 plus years. We knew each other about 5 years before that, before we got married. And so when I met her, probably the first thing I remember is seeing her in a theater production in our high school. We were in a drama class together. We ignored each other. The drama teacher was so impressed by my acting skills that she said, "Boy, you'd be really good at lights and sound." And I think I did approximately 2 plays before she was smart enough to say, "Don, boy, would you be good on lights and sound?" And one of my friends was doing lights and sound, and I never did another play after that. Now, I did end up playing in the pit orchestra in high school, and Lisa was on stage acting. But the reality is, in our small town, we grew up close to Detroit. I'll let her fill in some of the details here. But by the time we were in high school, she was already in every theater production that was going on in our high school. And her father was the musical director in the community theaters. That was the most prominent community theater that was going on around us. And they almost didn't let her even be in the plays because her dad felt like, oh no, everyone will think she's in the play because of me. So do you remember like when you started off acting? Yeah.
John, that's hilarious.
Yeah. By the way.
Yep.
Lisa will know, she'll be able to tell you exactly. I round things, and it always irritates her. So I would say I'm 64. She'd go, "No, you're 63 and a half." Okay, whatever. We also have 5 kids. Just to give you a backstory, though, I'll let her talk about the acting. But somewhere close to 70 audiobooks, over 8,000 voiceover projects. It's crazy the number of, if you were here in the Los Angeles area, you would have had a chance to hear her on drive time radio, where there would be a commercial playing, and she would be the voice in the commercial. People wouldn't recognize her half the time. She's not really all that excited about the tech stuff. But so let's go back before you ever got in high school and were doing plays. How did it start when you were younger? Do you remember the first play you were in?
Yeah, well, it kind of goes back farther than that, because I don't know if you guys, any of you, the 7 listeners, that's an LA reference. A famous DJ, well-known DJ, used to say the 7 listeners on a show that had the largest audience in LA. Anyway, did any of you ever have your mom follow you around for a day and write down everything you said all day? Mine did once, but she also was a teacher who was staying home with me as a baby until I was 3. But she said that I talked so well, so early, and so much that she decided it would be fun to write down everything I said in a day. And I can't remember how many months old I was, and I know I have that paper, that documentation in a box somewhere. But yeah, she did that. And
You're
then
still a good talker, by the way.
I talk.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I do talk. I do that. And
Okay.
sometimes people even pay me for it. But and sometimes they'd like to pay me to shut up,
Yeah.
right?
Well, we won't get into that discussion. Not live.
But yeah, she did that, and I know that I I have some memories, probably because they were reinforced later, but of quoting TV commercials, doing the voices, that kind of stuff as a toddler, really, really little. And I remember my mom saying something about she couldn't figure out what I was saying. I was like 2 or something, and pinch the nostrils, tilt the head back. And there was a public service announcement on TV on how to do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and I had it down. But it took my mom a while to figure out what I was talking about. Tilt the head back, pinch the nostril, Yeah. So I did that stuff. And my dad was the musical director of Wyandotte Community Theater. It was a pretty big deal back in the day. I think it still exists. I don't know. Suburban Detroit community theater that really did have some good stuff going on. And I can remember they did South Pacific when I was 3 or 4. I want to say 3. And if you're familiar with that show, there are 2 children. There's supposed to be a boy and a girl. My sister is 7 years older than I, and her hair was very long, but mine was just short and curly. And I guess they didn't have very many kids coming through for auditions. And my dad thought, I don't know, because I mean, my sister and I both sang in children's choirs at church and all the stuff. Well, I wasn't singing in a choir at 3, but anyway, I can remember I have this memory of walking from the kitchen doorway through the living room. It was definitely evening. I remember the, kind of dim lighting, and like singing something at my dad's direction as we were walking together, my sister and I. But I guess in the end, they decided I really was too little and my sister really wasn't into it. So they found some kids for South Pacific, and I vaguely remember seeing the show at that young age. But later, a real inflection point for me, I think, in voiceover and narration is a memory in 3rd grade. It's a Friday afternoon where the teacher's, I'm sure, trying to get through what she had planned for the week, a dry social studies textbook. She's going down the rows of desks and having each kid read a paragraph or maybe 2 if they were really short. And next, going on to the next kid. And, some kids haltingly stumbling over words and whatnot, and others doing a little better. And when she
I
got...
hated that.
I didn't. When she got to me, I can remember kind of the layout of the book, and that, I went down that column, down the next column, on to the next page, on, and to the point that the little boy seated in front of me, I remember him saying, I don't know who the kid was, but I remember this child in front of me saying under his breath, geez, because it was just kind of going on and on. And eventually I stumbled once or twice and she moved on to the next kid. But that teacher didn't like anybody, even herself. I years later found out she actually had an eating disorder. But yeah, she was interesting. But it was kind of an inflection point for me that this reading aloud thing went well.
Yeah. Now, you're the product of 2 teachers, so that doesn't surprise me.
My mom taught kindergarten, and she would read aloud to me. Some, not
But
really
she'd
as
also
much
have
as I
you
did.
read, right?
She taught me to read before I started kindergarten because I asked to, and she thought I could probably handle it. And I was bored because my sister was away at summer camp for a couple of weeks, which everything my sister did was like, I wanted to go too.
And I think that's common, though. If the younger siblings have some sort of advantage where, I mean, it turns out to be an advantage later where they're, not intentionally, but they're competing or trying to imitate their older
Yeah,
siblings.
whatever she did, I thought was
Yeah,
like so
yeah,
cool and wanted to do it too.
yeah.
But anyway, my mom did teach me to read some before I started kindergarten, but then I still had a lot to learn in first grade when
Oh,
we actually learned reading. That's another
okay.
memory. But but when I was in fifth grade and Wyandotte Theater again was doing Oliver, and you need a whole crop of kids, especially boys, but a lot of children for Oliver. Well, of course, I wanted to audition. I'd been doing children's choirs and all the stuff all those years. And my dad had decided it would be too awkward. It would be regarded as nepotism if I got in. And he knew I was a good singer, but he just thought, no, I don't think, no, you can't do it. I was livid. I was
Complaining?
vocal, crying buckets, oh man, I was mad, I was sad, I was all the things, very dramatic about it. And the last night of auditions, which would have been, I think, a Tuesday night, I had been at Pioneer Girls, if anybody has, never mind, it's a kind of a Girl Scoutish thing. I had been at that. I was home doing my math homework at the kitchen table. It must have been at least 10 p.m. And back in the days of landlines, I picked up the phone. The phone rang in the kitchen where I was sitting. I picked up the phone. It's my dad. Hey, get your mom on the phone. So mom, she was in bed already. I'm not trying to sleep, but she was in bed reading or watching TV, probably reading. And she picked up the phone, and if you're too young and don't understand how landlines work, you had to wait for the other person to pick up the phone so you could hang yours up or you'd end the call. So I'm waiting for my mom to pick up the phone, and she picks it up, and my dad says, hey, what would you think about bringing Lisa up to audition? Cat was out of the bag. My mom probably would have done it anyway, but now she was trapped, essentially. She would have had to be the bad guy at this point. She got dressed, took me up for the audition. Oh, because what had happened was that the choreographer, it was kind of slowing down last night of auditions. The Pioneer Girls were a big deal in my church, but not for you, no. Yeah. Anyway, I think there was a boys equivalent though, John, wasn't there? I've heard somewhere. Anyway, yeah. It was my friend's church that I went to Pioneer Girls at. My church didn't do that. But the choreographer had said to my dad, because things were slow, not that many people were coming through the last night of auditions, hey, Dave, how old is your daughter? Oh, she's, 10, I guess, didn't she want to audition? Oh, yeah, she really wanted to audition. Well, why didn't she come through? Well, I just didn't think it'd be right. Boys Brigade, there you go. He explained to her, and she said, well, that's not fair. She should be allowed to audition. So my dad called my mom, and I auditioned, and I got in, and she picked me for one of the child dancers as well. I did well enough at that to be one of the few child dancers, and I did that. And what my dad ended up doing was any shows that I auditioned for, he would just excuse himself when the casting committee discussed me so that, they could say whatever they needed to. But I did that, and the next year was not Flower Drum Song. I don't know. I did 4 musicals, including The Sound of Music. I was one of the kids. And that they did have a ton of kids come through for that, as you can imagine. Well over 100 kids auditioned for that. And so that was pretty special and fun. So I did those musicals. I did a lot of theater in high school, both musical and non-musical plays.
I think we were in drama class together, right?
We were in a play productions class
Okay.
together that you had gotten roped into, yeah. But
I was doing lights.
but But there was a production of A Midsummer's Night's Dream that he got stuck with having to do a part, and man, that Shakespeare stuff tied his tongue in knots.
I was amazing to say that. Pretend. I was
Yeah.
enough. There's no video
He
of
got
that.
through it. No, there is no video
I was
record.
spectacular.
He got through it. And I was the same class. Besides A Midsummer Night's Dream, we were also doing the effect of gamma rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds, which 3 of us girls had seen at a theater arts, a thespian convention at Ball State University.
So, yeah. So here's the other thing that's happening. So in high school, she's going to drama, theater events, like summer camps, and going to basically
the International Theater Arts Convention at Ball State University every 2 years. We lived and died for that, and that was the ultimate. It was so fun. Didn't sleep for a week.
Yeah.
So much stuff, workshops, and main stage productions, and it was in Indiana. They had people from Second City in Chicago come down and do improv workshops with us. It was cool. So I did all that stuff. I did some theater in college.
What's your majors in college?
So I started at Central Michigan University and did some theater there. But when I transferred to University of Michigan School of Music, middle of sophomore year, the show they were doing that spring was Godspell, and I had done that twice already. So I thought maybe I should kind of focus on, academics and my voice lessons and whatnot. And so I didn't do that, and I really never got started again in doing theater at Michigan, which probably is an oversight on my part, but I don't know. I was busy doing all the other stuff. Yeah. So my degree is in voice. It's boy, I'm trying to remember the name of the degree. It was not mainstream.
Well, whatever.
Anyway,
you have a voice
but
degree.
it was like a voice major and a theater minor, and that was before the School of Music at Michigan became the School of Music, Theater, and Dance, which it is now, and musical theater became a major years later. But if that had been open to me, sign me up. I would have been all over that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. So yeah, so I did that stuff. And
now I want to fast forward. So that was your college, So all I remember. So by the way, we were dating in college, and she was just
our first date. Fun story, if you don't know, was Valentine's Day of our senior year of high school. Okay. Cue the cherubs and the whole. Yeah, it really was not for any particular reason except that. I had a state solo and ensemble festival, by the way, that day, but I had been after school on the Friday, because Valentine's Day fell on a Saturday. I had been late after school because an ensemble I was in was practicing for a state solo and ensemble festival, and he happened to see me in the hall alone, low risk, ask her out now, nobody's around. That's what he told me anyway, years later. So he asked me out, and yes, I said yes. And so I can remember on the bus coming back from that solo and ensemble festival, some of my friends, actually the ones that were in that production of Effective Gamma Rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds, anyway, saying, hey, what are you guys doing tonight? Maybe we should do something. I was like, I have a date. With who? Don Baarns asked me out yesterday. Oh my gosh. So anyway, yeah. So we went to a nearby theater, Fairlane Theater, if anybody knows the Detroit area, to see the movie The Goodbye Girl. It was sold out because, again, no internet. You didn't know until you got there. It was sold out. So we went to Dell's Pizza in Trenton and had pizza. And if you are anywhere in the Detroit area, I will sing the praises of Dell's Pizza in Trenton. It's
careful; it can cause marriage and 5 kids.
Could lead to marriage and 5 children.
Yeah, careful.
But it's a really good pizza place, and a friend of ours that was in our class is one of the family members. It's a family-owned place, and yeah, really good stuff. Anyway,
So then fast forward, we had
5
5 kids.
kids.
And she,
I was homeschooling the kiddos, and
I do remember coming up. So Lisa's homeschooling our 5 kids. Now, I did about 3% of the 100% for homeschooling. Okay. She did 97%, and that's probably the ratio is off. It's probably more 99% to 1%. But she was teaching. And the one thing that they did virtually every day was she would read to them, and then she would do the rude thing, which is have every kid read back to the other kids.
yeah.
And so they all took their turns reading. But she was so obnoxious that when she's reading her parts, she is going ahead and acting her parts so that if there was a dog in it, she's doing the dog voice. One of the things that if you're ever around us in person and you met our cats, she actually has voices for all our animals. She'll talk to them in their own, I mean, they all have, so I can actually tell which animal she's talking about without her saying anything because she just kind of does it without thinking about it.
I don't know. I don't think about it. I don't know. He always says I have a different character voice for each of the pets, but I don't think about that.
She just does it.
do it.
Anyway,
I don't know.
so our kids, this is how when Donnie's on the show someday, he'll talk about the story. He went over to a friend's house.
Oh yeah.
And
he heard it was at a soccer practice, and a mom was reading aloud to the younger siblings, and he walked by and he thought to himself, "You're not doing it right."
Yeah. Because
whatever, she wasn't doing the voices.
The
whatever.
mom was doing the normal reading a story, and the mom was not doing the dog as a dog, and the bird as a bird, and the adult male as an adult male, and the children's voices. Where if Lisa is reading the same story, and my son recognized the story,
it all, honey.
yeah,
Really.
she would just read it. And so it's part of the reason that when we do voiceover together, we'll do dual voiceovers. And if it's conversational, that's my strength because I don't have to read it. I don't have to read it. I can just be me, basically, and I can smudge words together. I can eliminate syllables. She'll always like, wow, I think they're really paying for all the syllables. Let's try to read every word there. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize I missed a word or missed a syllable. She'll correct me on that. So she's excellent at cold reading, and cold reading properly with emotion because she's just done cold reading her whole lifetime since she's been a little kid. Where my mom, that I don't ever remember my mom reading to me. I'm not saying she didn't or did or whatever. I just have no recollection of my mom reading to me, just due to our upbringing and the circumstances in our life. Where she was reading from the time she was
My
little.
mom taught kindergarten.
Yeah.
So yeah, she did do voices in the picture books, you know. I can remember her reading chapter books to me later. I don't specifically remember voices, but she,
What's
I'm
a
sure she
chapter
was
book?
decent.
I don't know what a chapter book is.
Okay, a book with like a longer book, not a picture
Oh,
book for
I
little
see, I
children,
see,
but
I
a book
see.
with I
Okay.
remember she read a lot of Little Women to me. I was homesick with something horrendous that I was home for a while, and she tried to get far enough ahead that I wouldn't read. Well, everybody knows Beth dies. Beth dying.
don't know
when I
that.
was alone because it's okay. Yeah.
Anybody
Anyway.
who has paid attention to literature and knows
Or
that
seen one
series.
of the, I think, 4 or 5 movie versions, which I haven't actually,
Okay.
of Little Women. But yeah. Anyway,
Some of our audience
but
is
my
younger
mom,
than us.
there are recent do-overs
Okay.
of Little Women. It's kind of a classic. Anyway, but my mom did read aloud to me, a fair amount, but I think I kind of took it to another level. I don't remember her doing anything British or,
Yeah.
the character. Definitely the character voices in the picture books, for sure. She
So-
did, but she taught kindergarten and she was
You just
real
men-
good at it.
You just mentioned British. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm doing it anyway.
So
wait. So when you're so here's the thing. So one of the things that Lisa gets hired for, so she's done, like I said, it's over 8,000 voiceovers, and when she's done them, she'll get asked to do British as it's one of her accent specialties. Now, she knows enough to know that there is no true British accent. Like, there's no Southern accent. If we're here in the States, there is no Southern. There's Louisiana's one form of Southern.
West Texas,
West Texas.
Georgia,
They're
whatever,
they all have their
Yeah.
regional. And one of the things that she's a specialist in is doing a British flavor without having it be strictly South London versus what is it? NP? RP.
I do
RP.
RP.
Okay.
Everybody's RP, unless if it's in an audiobook and there's somebody that that RP would not be appropriate, then okay, yes, I'll regionalize it a bit. But there's a YouTube video of this gal that says, "This is my party," and she's from Britain. She's a British person, but she says, "This is my party trick," and she has like 17 different regional accents. It's amazing. It's very fun to listen to, but I do not get that granular at all.
Well, the one thing I've noticed over time, though, is that you will do a British flavor, and we talk about this. Because of singing in college, you learn French.
Yeah, you
Spanish, French,
you
German.
have to study a little bit at least of Italian, German, and French. And
Okay.
I had 4 years of French in high school, and I did another year in college, and it asked me to carry on a conversation. Now it's not going to happen. And when I'm fishing for words I used to know, then the tiny bit of Spanish I've picked up just because I live in Southern California, it'll be a Spanish word that comes to mind. So don't ask me to speak it now, but it's almost a handicap in that you get something with a French word and you need to say it the way an American says it.
Croissant.
Yeah.
How would the French say?
Croissant.
They mess that totally
croissant.
up.
You got that thing, croissant. And like I had to Google and look for YouTube videos of how to say Louis Vuitton the way an American would, like that, instead of Louis Vuitton. You have to kind of figure out, okay, wait, you can't really say it French. How do Americans say this word? It's weird. But yeah, and then to record audiobooks under. Nope, it's me. Although there are a couple of books on Audible where my name is misspelled because it went through a middleman, so I didn't get to upload the thing. And the middleman, there's one where I'm Lisa B, just the initial B. It's like, how did that even pass ACX? I don't know. There's one where it's I think it's like the traditional Baarns spelling.
Yeah.
But no, I narrate under my own name, and yeah.
And it is funny. So she's also got some corporate ones, or where people hired her to do one that didn't go through ACX, where they kept it. So she's got some. There's a bunch of books that just don't show up under Audible.
Yeah.
But the name. She's also been hired by the middle people, where
And they
they
got my
found
name
her
wrong.
and they got her name wrong, and it doesn't even show her in some cases. So she has more books than what show up on Audible.
Yeah. And
Because
then I had a whole series with an author that was long enough ago that she's one of the really ticked off about the pricing structure. And so as she's pulled a few of them as it's reached the point where she could.
Yeah, when
the
they got the
7 years are
7-year
up.
point, she pulled them off of Audible. So she's got a couple
Because
series there.
she's still waiting for a miracle to happen on another platform, and I don't know.
Yeah. So
We're all holding our breath on that one, right? But
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, and then the other thing that happened was because so Donnie, our oldest, is 40 now, and we have an 8-year gap to the younger kids, as we still sometimes refer to them, or we did then. There's an 8-year gap, and then 4 little stair steps all in a row with
roughly 2 years apart.
2 years or significantly less in a couple of cases. So we had Donnie was still a couple months short of turning 14, and we had 4 littles under 6.
Yeah.
That's serious parenting there, and thank God for Donnie, my right-hand man, and which I thought would kind of, possibly burn him out on ever having children. But no, it was the night that he was moving from Visalia in the Central Valley of California, where he had done 8 seasons as a minor league baseball broadcaster, and he was moving to Omaha for a significant step up, from single A to triple A ball, if you're into baseball. He happened to mention that during the off season at the church he was part of up there, he volunteered in the toddler nursery where he had earned the nickname of the baby whisperer. He on purpose was around little children.
Well, now he has his own.
And now he has Junie, our one and only so far grandchild. But yeah, when he was little, and there really wasn't internet, and I was carefully culling together, picking and choosing the bits and pieces from different providers of his homeschool curriculum. But then as he, as the little tribe of toddlers was getting closer to school age, his best friend's mom, my good friend, was curriculum director for our homeschool. And she had said to me, what are you planning to do as you, for school with these guys as they reach school age? You're not going to be able to do what you've done for Donnie with all the shopping and picking and choosing and customizing. And, I know you like to read aloud to your kids quite a bit. I think you would really like Sunlight curriculum. It's spelled S-O-N if anybody's looking for good homeschool curriculum. Yeah. It includes a lot of reading aloud, and I think you'd love it. And so I looked into it and I was sold, and that's what we did with the younger kids. And there was a ton of reading aloud.
Yeah.
And
So
I got a lot of practice, but we loved it. They loved it. And also, back to the Pioneer Girls and Boys Brigade reference, we did every year, we read through the Bible as part of our curriculum every morning over breakfast. Again, pre-internet, I had mapped out, okay, if you read 4 chapters and a psalm and a proverb 5 days a week, you get through it in a year with a couple weeks to spare. And we did that for years. I mean, there were a couple, like the year that we moved here in the summer, we never got past the Gospels and Acts and kind of hit the reset button because we were moving and it was crazy. But apart from that, we read through the NIV, 1984 NIV, if anybody cares, every year for years and years. And it
that's a
got
lot
to
of
be,
reading out loud, though.
it got to be, and our daughter Carrie, who is now 32, read so well, so young, that but the mental awareness doesn't always catch up to the reading ability. She was reading about in Kings or Chronicles about the Queen of Sheba coming to visit Solomon with a very great caravan, and she looked up and said, thinking of the family minivan at the moment, "Oh, was that the first car?"
No.
No. Several thousand years BC, it was not. You had to explain that. I don't know. I'm a mom. Can't help myself. But yeah, reading aloud to them. If a book was very British, set in, Winnie the Pooh, Harry Potter, if it was very British, I'd get a few paragraphs in and realize it and be like, no, sorry, switch to British accent. You just can't read. There's an e-learning company I've done over 100 projects for that made me read an excerpt of Alice in Wonderland, American accent. That was hard. You guys, it's so British. I'm like, are you sure I can't do it? No, we really need American. Okay. It was hard to read Alice in Wonderland, American accent. I'm sorry.
I do remember the client. We had one client that was hiring you for doing British accent and did maybe a year or two worth of stuff. I don't remember the time frame. At one point, they asked her, "Can you
do an American accent by any chance?"
And it's like, well, maybe we could do that. Yeah.
I do live here.
That's, by the way. Now,
Translate for local languages around the world. Translator. At
so,
least in my career, 40 plus, was as a Bible translator. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Yes.
well, so,
Hats off,
so,
dude. Yeah.
so Victoria, let me.
Man, John, there was one time our church does a day of prayer and fasting every 2 years. They have like a 1/3 scale replica of the Wailing Wall outside, and just it's a really cool thing. But anyway, um, there was a huge display of people groups that still did not have the Bible in their language, and an elderly couple that had been in the mission field for many, many years, and another similar couple with them were looking at this list and saying, well, that's not accurate. John and Susan did that. At least the New Testament, I think, or the Gospels for that. Yeah, it was pretty wild. But yeah, there's a lot still. Do I teach e-learning as a course?
Oh, wait. Let's go back to
Oh,
Victoria's
sorry.
here
Do any of
first.
your other children share your passion for voiceover? Well, Donnie does a ton. He's done a lot more than I have voiceovers. He left me in the dust ages ago.
Part of that is that, though, Lisa, in the middle of so we've been doing this we're about 12 years in now from the time we started.
Yeah, we started with audiobooks because Donnie was doing minor league broadcasting and had a deep disdain for what they make the broadcaster do in the off season, which is sales, season tickets, group outings, that kind of stuff. He did it and did it well, but it was not, he was looking for something to do in the off season. And Don had he had a blog. We used to do a lot of social salsa dancing years ago, a lot. And Don had a blog called The Unlikely Salsero, because older white guy, and noticed a book on social dancing that was, first in its category on Amazon, and bought it and thought, this is crap, I could do better. So he took a bunch of his blog articles and reworked them to become 2 or 3 volumes of a book. And he was teaching a salsa class at the time, and people said it was an ebook first, and people said, is there a print version? So he figured out how to do that with print on demand. And then somebody said, I'm waiting for the audio version. And so we never did record those books, at least not yet. But he looked into it and said, hey, Donnie, here's something you could do in the off season. And he did, and then we did, and
I started doing tech work for Donnie originally, where he was recording and I did his. We were in Audacity back in the day.
Yeah.
And then he realized, Mom's got a theater, Mom does voices,
right. And then,
so why don't we have Mom do some?
Yeah, and then he saw a book that was your first year of homeschooling that was up for audition on ACX. I was like, hey, Mom, you should audition for this one. And I did, and surprise, I got it.
Yeah.
And then he had done a fiction title for a particular author who had another book she wanted a female narrator for. And he said, oh, you should get my mom to audition. And I've done a bunch of books for her. And then she referred me to her friend. And, yeah.
So it started with Donnie doing some things. But
then he discovered voiceover.
Yes.
And that, for a while, we didn't do audiobooks at all for years.
Right.
And then lately, that same author asked me, hey, I've got a couple more titles. Could you, and people started asking me to do books. And here we are doing both.
So as far as, someone asked, Lisa's done, if she's done less than 1,000 e-learning, I'd be shocked.
Done a bunch.
I'd be shocked.
Yeah.
But we don't teach it yet. We should put together a course on that. That would make sense. And then what's your workflow or approach when you're recording a commercial script?
Commercial script. I don't always pre-read.
Now, okay, so here's the dirty secret. So and Heller does. So by the way, so some of the people that have been around for a long time, they will do a skim through stuff, and some of them will cold read things, but they won't say that in public. And for the
I
simple
just
reason
did.
that, for the simple reason that if somebody's newer and hasn't spent hundreds or thousands of hours doing this stuff, if you don't pre-read, good luck.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I've watched Donnie, I've sat behind him while he's broadcast baseball games, basketball games, hockey, he does a lot of sports. And those guys have to
They have to
cold
cold
read
read
those
the
things,
ads.
those
The ads.
ads.
Yeah.
And there's no, oh, I want to do it. No, you're on the air, baby.
It's live.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so Lisa, because of doing so many thousands of them, there are points where just from a time perspective where the multiple clients in a single day will come in, and sometimes she'll have an e-learning project to do, and then behind that there's going to be a phone greeting, there's going to be a video where
Last night I have an ad agency in South Florida that I have done. There's a car dealership that pre-COVID, they had both a Volvo and a Volkswagen dealership, the same family-owned company, and they lost
anyway.
one of them during COVID. But I still, every month, I've done well over 100 for these people for years. So last night I did their August Volkswagen summer sales, sizzle summer sales event, whatever, something. Did that, the timed read thing.
So
and
wait,
I did what?
timed read. So in other words, this car dealership, an
Oh,
average of once a month,
it's the audio for their TV ads is what it is that I do
and
every month.
and it's a 30-second and a 60-second very often.
30,
Sometimes,
just the 30, just the 30.
well, you've done both in some
Have
cases.
I don't
Yes, yeah.
know.
So sometimes it's a 30, sometimes she's had both 30s and 60s.
Oh yeah, definitely
And
for
then
radio. Yeah.
depending on the project, but she has done so many of these, and they're timed, and they're always this thing where if it's a 30-second, there's about 34 seconds worth of audio.
Yeah.
And it seems like if it's a 60-second, it's probably 65 seconds. So she's pretty darn good at going and reading this stuff and reading it quickly.
So yeah, so this client, because we've worked together so much, she actually messaged me last Thursday or Friday, I think, and said, and she only thinks in terms of word count. But, I learned early on in voiceover, the number of words will vary depending on how many syllables they have. So I'm just going to let the cat out of the bag and tell you my secret there's a site called wordcounttools.com. I don't know. I start to type word count in Chrome and it pops up for me. I think it's called that. But it has a syllable count.
Right.
And that is my gold standard.
Especially
And
on the
I have a
shorter things.
list. I have a spreadsheet with, here was the client and the script, and here's how many syllables it was, and it was relaxed. And here's how many, something else, and it was, it was a push, but we got it in 30 seconds. And so she had asked me last Thursday or Friday, this one's a little longer. Do you think that it will fit? And so I was able to send her this audio I did in 2017 for a radio ad, a timed 30-second read for an online provider of Indian specialized groceries that Don put really cool music with. And I was able to send her, okay, this is 170 syllables in 30 seconds. It cracks me up because it doesn't really sound that much in a hurry, but man, I had to work to fit that thing in there, So, your script is 164 as it stands now, so it will fit, but this gives you an idea. So she was able to get them to take out that not all four had to say a new 2024 Tiguan S and a new 2024 whatever it was, Volkswagen model. She got them to cut out the 2024s and stuff. So it was a little easier, but it still takes some time, like, okay, crap, it's going to be like 32 seconds. Okay, now that part sounds rushed, it takes a little bit, but I got it done, and
The one thing that Lisa's gotten really good at over
we
time
can
is,
read. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
we should chat offline for sure.
but
My workflow approach when I'm recording a commercial script. Getting back to that, so I typically, they aren't all timed reads. Most of them are not, and for me anyway. So for voiceover, I typically do not read the whole thing. I kind of look at the beginning to get an idea of what in the heck we're talking about, and then I do it. And then sometimes it's okay, you probably should have pre-read this one because, this could be better. So then I'm punching in sections and stuff. And sometimes when I get it into RX, because I do all my own production ever since he bailed on me because he so rudely went to South Africa for a client several years ago. And the night before taught me how to do all my RX stuff, all the production. I still have those notes, and it's hilarious, the level of detail I had to write down now. But yeah, I sometimes it's in RX, and I think, no, go back, but that's once in a blue moon that, it's like, that could have been better. Or even with an audiobook, the most recent book that I finished, there was I was in RX, and it was like, that character sounds a little too much like the other guy. And I went back and punched in a couple sentences for that character because I didn't feel good about it.
so let's back up.
So yeah,
So
I still didn't answer your question.
in the beginning days, I did 100% of her audio production. She was just simply, I had a template set up for her in Studio One.
I did
She
that,
just
and
she
then we
just
had a
did the raw
spreadsheet,
stuff.
send it off to
She
him,
would,
and he would do it and put the music with it if as required.
yep, and I did
And
100% of the audiobook stuff, and
he
then
delivered it too.
yeah.
He,
She didn't do
all I
anything.
did was
She didn't do anything.
all I did was be the pretty voice.
Yes,
But
but as
but
things,
that's how I became patient zero for RX mouth denoiser,
yeah.
because since I wasn't doing my own production, I didn't know how bad I was.
Yeah, I got kind of frustrated with how much work I had to do to take out her mouth noise.
Yeah.
And that was the genesis of the mouth declicker. And her voice actual sample went in to the developer at Isotope, a guy named Alexi, and he figured out, oh, this is what I need to deal with, because the mouth declick, yeah, if you knew how to finesse it, you could make it work. But I did a lot of work over time. She took over all that stuff as I was traveling, working with so many people. I didn't have time to do her work and work with everybody else. So she was always my Mikey for those who are old enough to remember the Life cereal.
Hey, Mikey.
Hey, Mikey. She likes it. And trying to get it simple. I was frustrated for a while because she didn't want to learn anything about this stuff. And it wasn't that she was opposed to it. It just wasn't a priority. And when we had all the kids at home and we were doing this stuff.
Yeah, when we started, I was still homeschooling 2 high schoolers.
Yeah.
And even though I had offloaded some we are really blessed. There's a local community college just a few blocks away, and they could have walked, and sometimes they did, but a lot of times it was quick, drop everything, run a kid over for that class, quick, run a kid over to the other campus that's for another class, pick up so-and-so.
She didn't have a lot of time,
Yeah, and I'm still checking geometry proofs and, stuff. I still had 2 in high school. And yeah, when we started. And then when my voiceover career really started to take off, the year before that, I had our youngest daughter's senior year of high school. I was tutoring through an agency where I traveled to the kids' homes. And that was a whole other thing that, but then the next year I just was tutoring 1 kid, and my voiceover career was really taking off, and they were really patient with me on what time I showed up and stuff. But by Christmas it was like, you're going to have to find somebody else, because it's getting crazy. I had so much voiceover work at that time that,
and everything was templates, everything, even RX. So what's happened over time though, is she's gotten all the stuff in RX1, both in when you have the more advanced tools, you can set up processes to where from a
Yes.
template point of view, she just opens the right template. If she's doing an audiobook, she opens the audiobook template. If she's doing voiceover, she opens her voiceover template. And because that stuff's all set up for her, basically she just records.
This is Studio One. I think you
Yeah.
said RX.
Okay,
This
in
is
Studio One.
Yeah.
And then in RX, it's set up with a batch process. She
I
throws her
throw
audio
that
in
file
there.
in there. It goes through all the stuff and does 90% or something of the cleanup. And then I go through with the little hand painting of, I
The
hate that little bump down there. And he says, it's not a problem. And I, it bugs me. So, yeah.
so sometimes
We disagree.
yeah.
What
Well,
needs
here's the thing.
editing. What?
There's times where she'll micromanage something because just because you can take out a sound in the background doesn't mean you need to.
A sound in my voice.
Oh, yeah.
Typically,
And
there's no background sounds. Yeah.
here's the funny thing.
Oh, gosh.
Everybody has something in their voice that they don't like. Everybody does.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happens is I have them if I'm editing my own voice because I'm working on it's something that I've recorded. I hear it and think, oh, I don't like that. But most of the time, I need to get over myself. If it was Lisa, I hear it, but it's like nobody cares.
Yeah.
Everybody has something. And I always think back to, I think it's Cindy Crawford was the first
Oh,
supermodel that had a
the
mole.
mole.
And prior to Cindy Crawford, most of you don't know our age challenge, you won't remember her, but a mole on our face would have been a disqualification. It's why I'm not a supermodel because of the appearance. Because of the appearance thing is why I'm not a supermodel. But she broke a barrier where you did not have to have a perfect whatever, quote perfect. Now it's almost a badge of honor when you have something that
Some
isn't
quirky thing.
something, then that becomes
Well,
your
and
signature thing. And that's the same with voice. You don't need to have a perfect.
And same with top 40 song. I thought Madonna was going to be a one-hit wonder, flash in the pan.
Yeah, you missed
I
that.
really did. Yeah.
Some of our audience don't even know who Madonna
I know.
is.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's the same thing. The feel is more important, and her voicing is way more important, and the feel she gives to the characters and the acting she brings to it is way more important than a little technical detail. So the two things she knows about RX are she can run her batch processes that have everything done and take away the 90%. And to be honest with you, if she shipped her stuff with that only, and she spent 2 minutes at the beginning and at the end, she would be fine. She likes to go through and check everything else, and she'll micromanage some things, but she has the little paint tool in RX, and she goes ahead and paints out a few things that she thinks are too much, but some of that, I'll look at it and listen to it and go, you don't need to do that. But it
then
bothers
he takes
her.
out things that.
Well, I take out the
yeah.
important things.
Oh,
yes.
Of course.
So it still works out that.
He taught me to notice things that should be taken out, though.
Yeah. Well, and also there's a difference.
And how to find them.
Yeah. Well, and of course it does work
Make
out
it
that make it bigger, how to zoom in and deal with the details. But the reality is, for the last 3, 4 years, 5 years maybe, she's done all her own production without me doing anything on it. And sometimes I'll sit around and listen to it while she's doing it. And if anything, she does too much, but because no one will pay, by the way, this is not news to all of you. Nobody pays us for perfect audio from a technical point of view. I always say, your goal is to be in the top 10%. But the difference between the top 10% and the top 2% is such a small little set of details, and that 95% of our audience, and so time consuming, that there's some diminishing return. And our audience has gotten used to, over the years, podcasts, which are low quality because of remote connections, and a lot of and one of the dirty secrets.
Phone.
Yeah, one of the dirty secrets though in the audiobook business is that the major publishers now do not have their editors go through and micromanage everything, unless if you are a Johnny Heller, Sean Pratt, there's a set of those people at the high end who have over 500 plus books, and they're being cast for something that they believe is going to sell tens of thousands of copies. they may assign an editor to go through and actually listen to the whole thing. But if your book is going into them and you have less than a few hundred books and you're not a known brand name, many times they no longer go through and listen to the whole thing. They kind of say this in essence. They don't say this publicly. They go, you know what? The acquisition editor liked Lisa. They like her voicing. We did an initial test of her room sound and it passed. It's good, great quality. And then beyond that, if she has some little quirk in her voice, if she had too much S in one little chapter or one little spot, they do not go through and micromanage it anymore. They just don't have time with the volume. Pre-COVID, everything was in a studio. Everything had an engineer working on it. Now, so much material is coming in from people working at home that they don't have time anymore to micromanage everything. So you no longer, your goal is to get yourself in the top 10%. Beyond that, there's diminishing return. And now I've relaxed some things, and it's embarrassing. I'll put something out and think, oh, if my engineer friends hear this, they'll think I was just being sloppy. And the reality is I make a business decision because what I know is the majors don't have time or the desire, because most listeners aren't even going to get through a whole book. They don't care. Okay, process question. Oh, how long do you narrate before a break? By the way, wait, I got to get this one in that says, you all are so cute. Well, you're not talking about me, but I appreciate that. So I thank you,
Julio.
Julio says that.
Ask this question. Dave, how long do you narrate before a break? 40 minutes in the booth, 30 minutes out, repeat. I'm not that granular, to be honest. I'm actually kind of working on trying to have more of a schedule.
But here's the
than
difference.
I do, but
wait. Because she was a singer in college and beyond, singers spend all sorts of time working on the muscles to produce sounds for hundreds and thousands of hours over that many years. And what happens is they have stronger. So let's pretend that she told you
my
that she
vocal
could.
cords can outbench yours.
Well, kind of. I mean, but you practice that. There's years of I hear you sing all this stuff and work on stuff. And she used to sing in our church choir. And before she would go, she'd be working on these exercises to have both more range, more capacity. So it is an interesting discussion. But whatever, if you may be better off with a schedule that's 25 minutes on and 10 minutes off. And that may be more productive over a course of a day. 40 minutes a day might be fine for you with 30 minutes out. That might work great. But what you do need to do is this. Experiment and see how productive you are over the course of a day, where instead of what you mentioned to begin with, 40 minutes on, 30 minutes out, there are some times and some passages and some styles that I know Lisa will, if she's doing one of these auto commercials, go ahead.
Oh, well, that I've gotten I've gotten pretty comfortable with knocking out those 30-second things. Yeah.
But she's talking a mile a minute. I mean, it's crazy how
yeah,
much.
and I'm just used to it, and I know, I'm gonna go for a while, and then I'm gonna have to take a breath, and I'm gonna reset the cursor there because or at the end, it's just a little bit over. I can slice out those pauses a little bit here, a little bit there. Does that work? Still doesn't. Okay, speed up. What can I speed up? Okay, so, but audiobooks, it really varies for me, and it gets stinking hot in the booth in the summer. Everybody's got the same issue, so that's a factor as well.
How much sleep she's had, how much what,
and then things like the book I finished most recently was Dual Point of View, British Woman, American Man, and I did it all. And it gets a little more fatiguing maybe with all the back and forth, and we're like, can I get through this chapter? How much longer? Scroll on the script. Oh yeah. Okay, I'm going to finish this chapter and then I'm going to go have lunch or something, But
I don't think you're so much time based. I think
I'm
she tries to
I'm
do a chapter or some sort of unit that's
I'm
for
more a
her.
check mark person.
Yeah.
You know?
So
Maybe it's from the homeschooling, which I said, but with that through the Bible in a year thing, like I'd read the first chapter and somebody else would read the next one and stuff like that. So they all were reading aloud every day too, besides, the multiple books that I was reading aloud with them too.
and Dave saying my personal record is recording 19:30 in 90 minutes. Yeah, that wouldn't be for the faint of heart. That would be
Woo!
smoking. And
Dude,
here's the thing.
hats off.
Yeah. But one of the things that I know is sometimes she could get through more, but it would mean that she'd need more than 30 minutes because there is a point. The muscles can only, if I bench press and I go ahead to where to its total failure, I need more recovery time as we mature than I did in my 20s. But so it depends on how much you do, and guaranteed. I've seen her go and spend an hour or hour and a half with no break because she's on a deadline, and then that's not a
Or
real
I'm
big.
just on a
She's on a
roll,
roll, and she'll
let's
go
get her
beyond.
done.
And then she also sometimes has, if she's doing a book, that's a different schedule because she's allowed to go and figure out, I've got a month to do the book, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever she's allocated for that.
Or I'd like to get it done and get paid sooner. Thank you.
Yeah. And then if she has a voiceover, sometimes those are depending on how many come in, and they're in little groups. And so she has 4 she needs to have done by the end of the day, and she doesn't want to stay up late because I'll be ticked off. And so she'll knock them out. Or sometimes it's
And
like,
I want that client to be happy that,
yep, yep,
like
yep,
quick delivery is kind of one of my things,
yep.
so
So we're not as regimented about it, but she's also somebody that will take a longer break, shorter break.
also it's an empty nest now. So nobody but
Yes,
he's the only one, and he
I
can
could care less.
forage for
Yeah,
food. So
yeah.
I don't have my little tribe, mom. So
So in the old days, she would record less. She would have to take more breaks and be a little more regimented about it because she'd
kids,
have to deal with
even
kids
though
for
they were
lunch.
teenagers,
Yeah, or
or
take them
drop off to
someplace.
class, or
Yes.
drop off to
Yeah.
church, or
Yeah. So
all the things.
so I
Yeah,
think Dave, sorry, not David. I think you should be proud of doing 19.
that's
But
insane,
but
dude. Man,
the flip side of it is, it's cool to be able to do that. I can hurt my voice by doing a whole lot all at once, meaning I'm going to need a day off after that or two. The last ones can sound not as good as the first ones. In talk of personal records, there are days where she's knocked out multiple hours worth of finished stuff, and there are other days where we both kind of have this little rule. Once we start making a lot of mistakes, it's time to take a break, and it may not be 40 minutes. So nothing wrong with having a 40-minute on, 30 off type situation. But once we're making mistakes, then it's like, okay, mental break, go do something else, go exercise, go walk the dog, feed the dog, hit,
check Instagram.
yeah, well, that's not me. Somebody does that a little more than I'd like. Anyway, so, but I don't know who that is. Okay. So anybody have any other questions? So, what I will say is this. She doesn't like the tech stuff directly. She learns just enough. The first 5 years, nothing, no tech stuff.
Yeah, I
And
was clueless on the tech to begin with, and he did it all. And then there was that rude awakening where he was flying to South Africa and was really not going to be available because it was going to be,
middle of the night,
well,
time
yes,
zone.
and working, like almost working 24/7 for the the week or so that he was there because
Oh,
of the intensity of it was audio rescue of audio that had been recorded that other people that heard it told his boss on the project, dude, there's nothing there, you're making this up. And they're rescuing, like resuscitating what is in there to find out. And it
yeah.
was
So
yeah,
there was a legal
intense.
case in South Africa that had hidden tape recorders, and I had to go listen to the recordings and process them with RX, like hundreds of hours in order to,
Daniel Barnes,
yeah, our son,
hey
one
dude.
of our sons, who is she,
who has pinch hit and done a couple of VO bits
oh
for
yeah,
me in the past, by the way,
well,
and is the only one of our kids that on a job for a church. They were doing a cultural sensitivity kind of thing on some course that they put him and a coworker through for a church job. And he turned to the other guy and said, "I'm pretty sure that's my mom." And it was. I had voiced this like Indian woman, like, complaining about somebody being insensitive
Can you
about
do
her
an
head.
Indian woman?
If necessary. But yeah, it wasn't super legit, but it was close enough. But Daniel recognized me, and you've
Yeah, right.
been in the
AutoZone.
AutoZone with
I've
our
been-
next door neighbor and heard the West Medical
Yeah.
on the radio and said, "Hey, that's Lisa." And our neighbor's like, "No," and he's like, "Yes, it is."
Well, so here's what
That is
final
not
thing.
my radio voice.
So
yeah.
what would happen? We had this interesting client that would call and contact us on a Thursday, and she would go ahead and do the spot, and it was a 60-second spot and a 30-second spot, and I would do all the music production and put it all together.
Eventually,
send
I
it
did
back,
it all.
and eventually
Because
she did it
they
all.
had
but
their
yep,
music donut, if you know
Yep.
the beginning and ending.
Yep.
They would often send me the client testimonials with like the whole audio and tell me which take they wanted, and they had recorded it outside and had to wait for a car. We're cleaning up that. Don's cleaning up that audio to make it a little more tolerable. And we've had so Daniel has pinch hit and recorded a couple things for me several years ago. Donnie left me in the dust, you know.
Yeah, he's done
long
about
ago.
15,000
He's done
voiceovers.
twice as much as me at
Christy's
least.
done.
Christy has done quite a few. Yeah, she's good. And our daughter Carrie has done one time with West Medical. I needed. Sometimes they just send me the script that they want the client testimonial to say. She has gone out to her car back before COVID when she went into work. Gone out to her car on her lunch and recorded a
Little
short
testimonial.
for me. Nailed it.
Who hasn't? David's never done
David,
anything.
I think David,
I don't remember him doing
I
anything.
remember him being in the booth. He was thinking about doing some voiceover work, but then didn't really do it. I'm not sure if he ever recorded anything that stuck for me.
So here's the thing. All
but
our
yeah,
kids are
they
better
all-
than me. Okay? So that's easy. None of them.
He is great with the conversational reads, though. So that's where the tables turn, and he'll say to me, "You know what? I think you could, and I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. Good. Yeah." So
I think you could sound like you don't know what you're doing, like I do. And then that
a
way.
little less read, a little more talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little
So-
more combo.
So we trade 90% of it. She's way better than me. If you have to read word for word, I will misread things. She doesn't. And, so there's a whole thing there.
It's
So
11:08.
Yep, we're done for the day. So anyway, if you guys have questions, we're going to have Donnie, our son, on because he's the voice of soccer worldwide right now for some pretty major tournament soccer stuff. He's been the voice of Major League Baseball
Yeah,
and spring
he has.
training.
He's done some Oakland A's. He used to do the Oakland A's spring training pre-COVID. Several seasons he did all their spring training games.
Yep, and he's
Oakland
just, but
loved him.
he's great in terms of voiceovers.
Oh, yeah, so
He's
good.
done some audiobooks, but now he likes the projects that are done in a day. Voiceover work's harder to get because of they're paying a large amount of money for a small-ish project, but they need it, and they need it often in a timely manner. So Lisa's brilliant at getting stuff back to them. She'll stay up late, get up early, whatever it takes to get something done. So she handles the business side of it very well. If you ever get a voiceover client, get things back to them early. Mr. Heller, who'll be back next week, will tell you when he gets his books in earlier for clients, they always are happy about that. And in the few cases, he's only had it come up a couple times over his 15, 20-year career where he's going to be later. He is letting them know insanely early that, wait, I have a minor issue. I've been sick for a week here. I'm behind. I could be late by a week. Do we have any schedule, that we could deal with? And he's letting them know as soon as possible. I don't remember. I think it's come up a couple times over the last 10 years where you've had to tell someone this will be late.
Once.
And one time we were out of town or we had gone but anyway, we won't go into the details on that. But here's the thing. She just ain't late on stuff because what she does is She'll stay up late. She'll
Well,
go.
like that agency in South Florida that I do those car ads for, and she had messaged me last week. She expected to have the script approved because it's a whole thing with a car dealership. There's a co-op that has to approve the script, and she expected to have it to me Monday, she said. And she didn't get it to me until late afternoon, early evening yesterday. And she said, if it could be on my desk by noon Eastern time, which is 9 a.m. here, and I had this, I was like, I'm going to get this done for you tonight.
Yep.
Because-
Yep. And that's the way you keep clients. So you do have to be good at voicing, but you also have to do all the other stuff, and you deal with multiple. So people think we have no bosses. Instead, we have 150 bosses
Yeah.
for all this stuff. So
It's true.
thanks for joining us. I don't remember who's next week. Johnny will be back. He's off recording a major production here this week, and new. But he'll be back next week. So as always, super happy you were here. Be sure to share. Be sure to like. Be sure to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And as always, we look forward to seeing you on the wires. Have a great day. Bye bye.